The round, meant for Commander Ryland Briggs, skimmed past his head by barely 3 inches, the shockwave brushing his cheek before the sound even caught up, and a second shot crashed against the boulder shielding him, spraying sharp fragments of granite across his bare forearm. The SEAL element was trapped in the thick Red Valley wilderness, boxed in by an enemy no one believed existed, and fighting a firefight that should never have unfolded. And the only person capable of turning it around was the intel specialist they'd once written off as dead weight, right up until she pulled a Barrett M82 from her pack and rewrote their odds. Before we break down what unfolded in those 18 minutes that shattered the idea of what's possible, drop a comment telling Major Tom's tales where you're watching from. Because this isn't just a story about shooting. It's the moment a team of America's elite realized the most dangerous person in the room is often the one everyone overlooks. So let's get started. The infill had gone smooth, too smooth. The MH-60 Blackhawk setting them down just past midnight, with rotors slicing through fog thick as drenched cotton. And Staff Sergeant Tessa Ward had stepped out last, her boots pressing into the moss without a sound. She'd shifted the pack on her shoulders, far heavier than standard issue, heavier than anyone noticed, and slipped into formation silently, ready for a mission that seemed simple. Intel pointed to an extremist cell hidden in the backcountry, building weapons caches and prepping strikes on federal sites, and the SEALs were sent to find, observe, and, if necessary, stop them before things escalated beyond control. Ward was assigned strictly as an observer, an intel asset and target analyst, someone meant to confirm faces rather than join the fight, but that was 4 hours earlier. And now, with dawn filtering through towering firs and cedars, the op had unraveled into something none of them had expected. The cell wasn't only armed, they were trained, coordinated, and waiting for them. Commander Ryland Briggs guided his 8-man unit through terrain that should have offered ideal concealment, thick brush, natural defilade, and tight sight lines perfect for close-quarters tactics where SEALs normally dominated. Somewhere between the landing zone and their target, they'd clearly been seen, or maybe compromised long before boarding the bird, and either way, the enemy had laid their trap, and Commander Ryland Briggs had led his squad straight into its jaws. The first warning came when Corpsman Nate Kwan, walking point, threw up a clenched fist, freezing the line as shapes moved through the morning haze. No animals, but armed men shifting with practiced coordination, sliding into flanking arcs with rifles raised. Briggs keyed his comms. Probable contact, weapons tight. Then the woods exploded around them as automatic fire ripped in from 3 angles at once, bark shredding off trunks as rounds climbed the timber columns, leaves and branches vaporizing under the barrage. The SEALs broke apart, diving for any cover they could find and firing back in disciplined bursts carved from years of muscle memory. But they were outgunned and outplayed. The ambushers had shaped the terrain perfectly, weaving interlocking fields of fire that turned the forest floor into a slaughter zone. Any attempt to maneuver was beaten back by waves of gunfire. They couldn't push forward or pull away. They were completely pinned. Tessa Ward dropped behind a huge fallen cedar, her M4 tracking movement. But unlike the others, she wasn't shooting. She was watching. Counting muzzle flashes, reading firing rhythms, stitching together a full mental layout of enemy placements with the kind of structured clarity most people never learn. "Ward, put rounds out," Cole Mercer yelled from behind a boulder 15 meters away, but she tuned him out. Adding noise wasn't the priority, understanding the full shape of the trap was. Only then could she break it. Briggs's voice cut in over comms, steady despite the chaos. "Panther 6 to all elements, we're in a built ambush. Enemy holds high ground north and east. Break contact and fall back to rally Bravo." But as Nate Kwan shifted to move, A burst sliced past him close enough to take his head. The attackers weren't trying to scare them off. This wasn't pressure. This was extermination. "They're running suppression teams," Ward said sharply, slicing through the radio traffic with unexpected authority. 3-man groups, one laying fire while 2 maneuver, pushing a flank from the west. "How do you know?" Briggs demanded, firing into a tree line where he'd caught movement. "Because that's exactly the play I'd run," she answered. Her voice flat, pure tactical logic delivered with unshakable certainty. Another burst cracked out, and this time Petty Officer Jordan Hale took the hit, the round slamming into his plate carrier and throwing him onto his back. The ceramic plate absorbed most of the hit, but Jordan Hale was still on the ground choking for breath, likely dealing with cracked ribs or worse, and the situation was imploding fast. Ryland Briggs felt it. The whole team felt it. They had only minutes before the enemy finished their flank and collapsed the SEAL line from every direction. And close-range combat in dense woods against fighters who knew every inch of the terrain was a grinder, nobody survived. That was the moment Tessa Ward made her choice, rolling away from the fallen cedar and crawling low through ferns and thick brush toward their original rally point, while the others were too locked in the fight to notice her slipping off. She reached the gear cache, rucks, extra mags, assorted kit, and dragged her own pack close, unzipping the silent military-grade zipper to reveal something that made the dawn light almost seem sharper. A Barrett M82, a 50 cal rifle built like a monster, nearly 30 pounds unloaded and 4 feet long, firing rounds meant to tear through engines and light armor. No intel analyst was ever supposed to be carrying one, but there it was, matte black, lethal, fitted with a Mark V scope and a suppressor that added another 14 inches to its already absurd length, and she assembled it with movements shaped by thousands of drills. Bipod locked, magazine seated, bolt racked with flawless efficiency, and suddenly the weapon was whole again, turning from loose parts into a precision instrument designed for absolute destruction. The firefight raged somewhere behind her, but Ward's mind had already stepped past the chaos. She was running angles, judging distances, reading the faint sway of the canopy for wind. The forest was thick, but 50 caliber rounds didn't care. Small branches meant nothing. Foliage meant nothing. Only solid trunks had any chance of slowing a shot, and even then only barely. And Ward was already mapping the cleanest lanes through the woodland maze. She moved again, slipping up a small rise that offered height and lines into enemy positions. The Barrett's bulk should have slowed her, but she drifted through the brush like smoke until she found a natural firing nest between 2 moss-covered boulders that granted cover and a perfect rest. She lifted the scope, and the battlefield sharpened into perfect resolution. Hidden fighters revealed by muzzle flashes, heat signatures, and tiny motions they thought were invisible. Her breathing steadied, becoming deliberate. Her pulse lowered by force of training, BOF conditioning sliding into place. The reticle settled on her first target, a fighter braced behind a thick fir trunk while directing fire toward Briggs, believing the 2-foot column of wood made him untouchable. But the Barrett wasn't a normal rifle, and Ward wasn't aiming at the tree. She was aiming straight through it. A 50 BMG round moving at nearly 2,800 feet per second with over 13,000 foot-pounds of energy didn't stop at organic material. It carved a temporary cavity through solid wood and kept going with lethal intent. Ward squeezed the trigger, the brake crisp and sure, and even suppressed the rifle still spoke with a brutal, hammer-like boom. The recoil hit hard, but she was ready, body absorbing it through perfect form, and downrange the shot blasted through the fur, punched out the far side and tore into the man behind it, dropping him instantly without sound. His comrades froze in confusion. The angle was wrong, the direction made no sense, and as they hesitated, Ward fired again, threading around through a narrow gap between two boulders where another fighter hid in a rocky depression, a shot demanding pure mathematical precision, and the bullet slipped through impossible space before ending him just as cleanly. 2 down in barely 16 seconds, and though the SEALs were still locked in the fight and pinned to the dirt, completely unaware the entire battle had just shifted, Ryland Briggs, hardened by enough deployments to trust his instincts, felt the change instantly. The rhythm of enemy fire was breaking apart, slipping from organized volleys into scattered, confused bursts. Tessa Ward kept moving through her priority list. First, the machine gunner hammering Cole Mercer's cover. One shot destroying the gun's internals and sending metal into the operator. Then, the team leader barking orders over radio, one round cutting the transmission forever. Then, a sniper perched high in a pine who thought height made him untouchable, until Ward proved otherwise with a single, definitive shot. 5 targets gone in 90 seconds, half her magazine spent, and panic was rippling through the attackers. They'd begun as the hunters, but now they were under fire from a ghost they couldn't find. The Barretts' thunder rolling off trunks and ridges so unpredictably that no one could trace it. Cole Mercer was the first to grasp what was happening. He'd heard enough firefights to recognize a 50 cal signature, and he knew their squad didn't carry one. He glanced toward where Ward had originally been and saw nothing, until he looked higher, spotting the faintest movement between the rocks. Holy shit! Ward's shooting! Ryland Briggs didn't have a moment to absorb the revelation. 3 hostile fighters were slipping through dead ground to flank the SEALs from behind. He tried to catch them with his rifle, but the angle was awful and their cover was tight. Then one simply dropped as if a string had snapped, followed a heartbeat later by the Barretts' deep concussion rolling through the forest. The remaining 2 froze, torn between advancing, falling back, or finding new cover. Their hesitation sealed their fate as Ward's next 2 rounds sliced through the trees with impossible precision. 8 targets down in 4 minutes, and the ambush was dissolving into scattered men scrambling to survive. Some retreated toward fallback positions. Others burrowed into whatever shelter they could find, praying the unseen shooter would miss them next. Ward tracked the runners through the glass. Long-range shots now, 800 meters and beyond. Dense vegetation where most marksmen would call precision impossible. But she compensated for wind, elevation, deflection, and movement. And each time the Barrett spoke, another distant body collapsed. Another fight ending under pure calculation and skill. 10 kills, 12 minutes, 12. Nate Kwan was treating Jordan Hale, stabilizing him while the firefight died down, but he couldn't look away from the tree line where enemy guns were going silent, one after another, cut down by a phantom operating with surgical discipline. "Who is that?" Kwan asked, awe breaking through the chaos. "Who the hell is firing?" Ryland Briggs already knew. He'd been tracking the angles through his scope, tracing each impact point back to the same rocky rise Ward had vanished toward. "It's the Analyst," he said, disbelief mixing with raw respect. "It's Tessa Ward." The enemy was shattered. Those who could escape fled in loose clusters, bearing no resemblance to the precise force that had sprung the ambush, and those who couldn't run surrendered or hid, hoping the invisible Reaper wouldn't land on them next. What had nearly ended Briggs's team in minutes had lasted 18 total. Ward's part consumed exactly 12, and all 12 rewrote what anyone thought possible in forest combat. 10 verified kills, each impossible, each perfect. She safed the Barrett, broke it down with the same crisp motions she'd used to build it, and walked back toward the unit like nothing about the last 12 minutes was remarkable. By the time she stepped out of the tree line, the rifle was sealed away, buried in her pack, invisible once more. The SEALs stared at her like she'd stepped out of another world, and Ryland Briggs was the first to manage words. Ward, pausing as he searched for language that didn't seem to exist. What the hell was that? She simply adjusted her pack, her face calm, as if she'd just returned from grabbing supplies rather than dismantling an ambush alone. 10 hostile targets neutralized between 300 and 900 meters in restricted terrain with heavy foliage, she stated. You're an intelligence analyst, Cole Mercer muttered, still trying to reconcile what he'd seen with what he believed she was. I'm also a graduate of the Special Operations Target Interdiction course, Tessa Ward answered. 3 years with Joint Special Operations Command. 47 confirmed kills during 17 deployments. They reassigned me to Intel Analysis 6 months ago. She hesitated, reconsidering her next words. After my last mission. Ryland Briggs studied her with the same intensity he usually directed at enemy combatants. Recognizing details he should have noticed earlier. The efficient way she moved through terrain, how she'd positioned herself at insertion with sightlines pre-calculated, and the fact her pack had been 20 pounds heavier than standard issue with no one questioning it. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked. "You didn't need to know," she replied evenly. "My role was analysis, unless conditions required additional capability." "And when did you decide they required it?" Briggs pressed. Ward met his eyes, hers carrying the weight of violence she no longer pretended she hadn't seen. "When Jordan Hale took a round, and you were about 4 minutes from being overrun." She delivered it without emotion, pure tactical logic. At that point, mission success demanded capabilities beyond what your team had. Nate Kwan had finished stabilizing Hale and was now checking the others. They'd been unbelievably lucky. Broken ribs were the worst injury. Under normal circumstances, pinned in a coordinated ambush on terrain built for the enemy, the casualties should have been devastating, but Ward's intervention had rewritten the outcome through precision force. "The Barrett," Briggs said. "That's not authorized for Intel personnel." "It's also not prohibited," Ward replied with the faintest smile. JSOC equipment policy states mission essential gear is determined by operational requirements. I determined it was essential. "Did you know we were walking into an ambush?" Cole Mercer asked, still trying to process the speed and accuracy of her actions. She shook her head. No actionable intel indicated prepared enemy positions, but the tactical profile supported contingency planning, dense forest, poor extraction options, extremist cell with unknown training and equipment. Probability matrix favored additional capability. She opened her tablet and pulled up satellite imagery, revealing enemy fighting positions, coordinated arcs, and active radio communication. They were set. This wasn't a chance encounter. They knew we were coming. A chill ran through the team. Compromise meant leaks and problems far beyond a single firefight. Briggs keyed the command channel. "Panther 6 to Overwatch. We encountered organized resistance at the objective. Enemy force demonstrated foreknowledge of our insertion. Request immediate extraction and review of mission planning." The reply came instantly, an MH-60 already inbound from standby, 20 minutes out. The team formed up, Jordan Hale supported between Nate Kwan and another operator, moving differently now with Ward positioned to provide overwatch, the Barrett within seconds of deployment. She wasn't extra baggage anymore. She was the one they wanted between them and whatever else the forest might be hiding. They reached the extraction point without further contact. The enemy had completely withdrawn, unwilling to engage again with someone who could kill them through terrain they thought made them safe. The Blackhawks descended. rotor wash tearing through undergrowth, and the team boarded quickly despite exhaustion, with Ward climbing in last, taking a seat near the door to keep her field of view. As the helicopter lifted off the forest floor, Ryland Briggs moved across from her, the noise making conversation impossible, but meaning unnecessary. The roar of the rotors made any private conversation pointless, but Ryland Briggs didn't need spoken language. He simply extended his hand, and after a brief pause, Tessa Ward took it, the gesture carrying a weight of respect only warriors understand when words fail. The flight back lasted 40 minutes. Most of the team slumped into exhausted sleep as their bodies crashed after the adrenaline, but Briggs stayed awake, studying Ward with the focused reconsideration of a man forced to rebuild his understanding from the ground up. She hadn't saved them by luck. She'd saved them through preparation, discipline, and abilities far beyond anything in her briefing. She'd walked straight into a death trap alongside them, identified the threat, deployed a weapon she shouldn't have had, and executed shots most trained snipers miss even with perfect sightlines, and she'd done it all as if it were just another task. The debrief stretched on for 6 hours. Ward's report was crisp, clinical, breaking down each shot with exact numbers: range, wind, angle, target condition, impact effect, and the intel officers kept interrupting her, asking her to repeat herself as if trying to process impossible physics. "You're telling us you hit a moving target at 900 meters through foliage?" one officer asked, staring at her like she'd claimed to fly there by hand. "He was moving at roughly 3 miles per hour on a predictable line," Ward explained calmly. "I projected his position 2 seconds forward and placed the round where he would be, compensating for flight time and deflection through light vegetation. A 50 BMG maintains enough energy after penetration to remain terminally effective." Briggs watched the exchange with grim satisfaction. His team had nearly died because someone in planning underestimated both the enemy and the asset assigned to his unit. Yet that same asset had saved them, despite being placed where she supposedly couldn't influence the fight. After the debrief, he found Ward in the armory, cleaning the Barrett with the same meticulous care she used for everything. The rifle lay fully stripped, each component receiving exact attention. "They're going to try to take that away from you," Briggs said quietly. "They can try," Ward replied, not even glancing up. "But if they issue orders restricting my loadout, I'll request a transfer. Plenty of units, and the private sector even more, understand the need to plan for capability over bare minimum requirement." She reassembled the rifle smoothly, then broke it apart again, running the sequence once more. "Still, I'd prefer to stay where the mission matters." Briggs sat opposite her, recognizing the familiar ritual shared by every seasoned operator. "Tell me about your last mission, the one that pushed you into intel." Her hands paused briefly, then resumed. "Target interdiction. High-value individual in denied territory. Everything followed the plan until it didn't. My spotter was hit. I had to carry him 4 kilometers through hostile terrain while engaging multiple elements. We both survived, but—" She weighed her words. "Command said I showed poor judgment, that I chose my partner over the objective." "You saved his life," Briggs said. "I did. The target escaped and killed 17 more people before we found him again, 6 months later. Command decided that meant I belonged in intelligence, less risk tied to my decision-making." Briggs understood exactly what she wasn't saying. Some bureaucrat decided loyalty made her dangerous, that saving a teammate instead of abandoning him meant she couldn't be trusted when ruthlessness was required. That kind of thinking ruined good operators. "For what it's worth," Briggs told her, "you made the right call today, And if you ever want a recommendation back to JSOC or any other team, you have it. Nobody on my unit will forget you walked into hell to drag us out." Ward finished assembling the Barrett again and locked it into its case. "I appreciate that, Commander, but I'm not ready to go back yet. There's something steadying about intelligence work, seeing the wider picture, watching all the pieces locked together. Maybe I needed time away from pulling triggers. At least until today." "Until today," she echoed. "But that was different, and that was required." They sat together in an easy, quiet pause, two professionals who understood the cost of violence and the burden that comes with capability. "The team's hitting a bar tonight," Rylan Briggs said at last. "Off-base, unofficial. The kind of place that doesn't ask why soldiers need whiskey on a Wednesday. You should come." Tessa Ward let out the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "Will I be interrogated about my shooting?" "Definitely." "Can you handle drunk SEALs being impressed?" "I've handled worse." The bar matched his description exactly. A long-standing dive that had served generations of military personnel. Worn dark wood, low lights, a jukebox humming old rock tracks. The sort of place where no one cared if you ordered whiskey at 3 in the afternoon. The SEALs had claimed a corner booth with the casual confidence of men who'd earned it. They were 3 rounds in when Ward finally arrived in civilian clothes that made her seem even less like the operator she'd revealed herself to be. A genuine cheer rose when she stepped in. Not mocking, not sarcastic, but real respect. Cole Mercer waved her over, shifting to make space, and someone slid a whiskey in front of her before she'd even sat down. Nate Kwan raised his glass. To Ward, the analyst who stopped analyzing and just started shooting. Glasses clinked. Ward sipped her whiskey with quiet composure. "Serious question," Jordan Hale said, ribs tightly wrapped, refusing medical quarters. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" "I've worked with top-tier long gun guys, and what you pulled off today wasn't normal." Ward gave the question real consideration. "I had a mentor," she said. "A former Marine Scout sniper who went contract. He believed precision shooting was half art, half physics, and that the rifle is just a tool. The real skill is understanding wind, terrain, velocity, pressure, and making calculations faster than conscious thought." "And he taught you to shoot through trees?" Cole Mercer asked, incredulous. "He taught me that obstacles are relative. A 50 cal round carries so much kinetic energy that what most people consider solid cover is often just a temporary inconvenience. The key is understanding density, energy retention, and accepting that sometimes a shot will fail. But if you understand the physics, far more will land than people think possible." Rylan Briggs leaned back, eyeing her with equal parts respect and curiosity. "How many confirmed kills do you actually have?" 47 before today, 57 now." She delivered it plainly. Without pride or apology, just fact. Multiple theaters, Afghanistan, Syria, and several places that don't officially exist. Average engagement around 700 meters. Longest was 1,400 in mountains with 30-knot crosswinds. The SEALs absorbed this in stunned silence. They'd assumed Ward was just support. Someone to carry gear and check intel while the real shooters handled the fight. Realizing she'd been eliminating enemy fighters at ranges where most shooters couldn't even identify silhouettes forced the team to reassess everything they thought she was. "Why the hell did they pull you out of the field?" Nate Kwan finally asked, voicing what everyone else wondered. Tessa Ward's expression dimmed. "Because I made a choice. My spotter took a round and was bleeding out. The mission required me to hold position and finish the objective. But if I'd stayed, he would have died. So I broke off, fought through multiple elements, carried him 4 kilometers to extraction, and called for medevac. He lived, the target escaped, and killed 17 more people before we found him again. Jesus Christ, Cole Mercer muttered. And they punished you for that? Command said I showed poor judgment, that mission success must come before individual survival, that caring for my spotter compromised my effectiveness. She drank again, eyes steady. Maybe they were right. Maybe 17 people died because I saved one. Bullshit, Ryland Briggs said, firm and final. You made the call any decent human being would make, and the fact Command can't see that says more about them than you. Conversation shifted to stories. Close calls, the strange details of different deployments. But underneath it all, something had changed. Ward wasn't the outsider anymore. She was one of them, accepted the old way, through shared danger and earned respect. Later in the night, Jordan Hale leaned toward her, voice low. Thanks for earlier. I was bleeding out, and maybe I would have survived, but you changed the outcome. You saved all of us. That matters. Ward met his eyes, seeing sincerity there. You're welcome. But that's the job. We take care of each other. That's the only thing that matters when everything goes to hell. They drank late, bonding in the only currency warriors trust, survival. Walking back toward base housing in the cool night, Ward felt something she hadn't felt in months. She actually belonged. The official report said the extremist cell was disrupted by coordinated SEAL action in hostile terrain. Ward's role was buried in a classified annex. 10 confirmed kills from long-range fire that broke the ambush and saved the team. No mention of the Barrett. No mention of her real capabilities. No one eager to ask questions that might spark uncomfortable paperwork. Sometimes the military preferred good outcomes without explanations. 6 weeks later, Ward received new orders, transferred to a joint task force specializing in high-risk personnel recovery. A role requiring intel analysis, tactical planning, and precision marksmanship. Finally, an assignment that recognized everything she could do. The orders carried a note from Ryland Briggs. Told you I'd get you back in the field. Welcome to the team. She packed her gear, including the Barrett, still neither officially approved nor forbidden, and prepared to leave. As she locked the rifle into its case, she ran her fingers along the cold metal, feeling the weight of a tool that had saved lives and taken them. Some people are built for violence, not because they crave it, but because they understand it, because they've trained until instinct overtook thought, until the weapon became an extension of will. Tessa Ward was one of those people, and now, at last, she was heading into a place that actually understood what her skill meant. The SEALs never forgot what unfolded in that forest. Nate Kwan kept meticulous notes on her firing positions, studying the geometry and trying to reverse engineer her ballistic math. Jordan Hale recovered fully and told anyone who'd listen about the intel specialist who saved his life with shots no one believed were possible. And Cole Mercer began carrying spare 50 cal rounds on operations, just in case Ward ever reappeared and needed ammunition. As for Ryland Briggs, he made it his mission to ensure that whenever a team required someone capable of flipping impossible situations through absolute precision and overwhelming force, Tessa Ward's name appeared in planning sessions, because sometimes the most important person isn't the leader, the pointman, or the comms expert. Sometimes it's the quiet figure in the back carrying a level of capability nobody anticipates until everything collapses, and she becomes the only barrier between survival and disaster. In a world that often values image over competence and credentials over grit, it's easy to overlook those who earned their place through fire, blood, and countless hours of training few could endure. But sharp leaders remember one truth. Never underestimate the one who seems content to watch, because sometimes they're not learning your job. They're deciding whether you're worth saving when the moment demands someone to step forward with skill far beyond expectation. The wolf doesn't announce itself to the flock. It observes, waits, and when required, strikes with a precision that shifts everything. Tessa Ward understood that better than most. And somewhere in the Red Valley wilderness, in a forest that would forever remember the day a SEAL team should have died but didn't, the trees still bear the scars of rounds that traveled impossible paths to achieve impossible results. 10 targets, 12 minutes, 57 confirmed kills and counting. Some warriors fight loudly, from the front, impossible to miss. Others operate where no one expects them, altering outcomes with lethal efficiency born from preparation and invisibility. Both kinds are necessary. Both kinds are deadly. But only one is endlessly underestimated, right up until the moment they prove that appearance has nothing to do with capability. And quiet professionals are often the most dangerous presence in any room. Thanks for watching. Every woman carries a story worth telling.